Hello, everyone. I'm Liz Taylor, ocean explorer, naturalist, and entrepreneur.
I'm Sylvia Earle, an ocean elder, explorer in residence, National Geographic, founder of Mission Blue.
And this is our show, Dive In, where we host informal and open conversations with the ocean community on topics of wonder and interest. I am going to, as usual, attempt to share my screen. And we will see if this works.
Don't try, do.
I know, right?
There we are. Almost there.
Almost there.
Yay.
Drag it over.
Dragging the world.
Here we are.
It's that iconic view, and today is Earth Day.
Yes, thank you, especially for joining us on Earth Day. It's a busy day in the ocean community, and we appreciate your time here today. Throughout the conversation today, you can put some questions that you might have into the Q&A box, and then we'll get to those towards the end of the presentation. And we want to start off by reminding everyone that
the world is blue. There it is. You can see it for yourself.
Absolutely. And if you look at the Pacific Ocean, it's really blue.
The blue face of the world. Amazing. Oh. Up close and personal, it's pretty amazing too. 97% of Earth's water is there in the ocean. And the rest, some of it's in us, in the clouds, in the rivers, lakes, and streams, in polar ice, but most of it is out there in the ocean.
Mm-hmm. And we really want to invite everybody to dive in.
And our guest today has dived in the Aquarius underwater laboratory that is still bubbling away down in the Florida Keys. And part of its mission in recent times has been to make a place where astronauts can simulate what it's like to be in space.
It's really the only place left like this in the world that people can do this right now.
Well, you could do it in a pool, but it's not the same. And there's
to have your whole life support system here.
Well, that's absolutely true. And the biggest difference, I think, aside from the fact that you're wet when you're underwater, is that it's alive. It's alive. And I think you have an image of one of the creatures that Cady Coleman, our guest today, probably saw during her time, well, as an astronaut, also being an aquanaut in the Aquarius underwater laboratory. These big creatures were so popular as a fish to be taken either by spear or hook and line or whatever for sport, sometimes for food, but mostly because people just went out because they're so big, the trophy fish, that they're almost exterminated. And then they were protected and protected and protected. But now the fishing lobby is interested in going after them again. So think about it. Maybe you can use your voice to allow these iconic creatures to have a break. We really need to keep them safe under the underwater laboratory called Aquarius, but in the ocean throughout the Gulf of Mexico, Florida, Caribbean, wherever they live. We need the big fish, and now they need us to take care of them.
Very true. So hopefully Cady will be able to tell us some grouper stories of her own.
Group stories and grouper stories.
Grouper therapy.
Yeah.
But we're going to ask Cady to turn on her camera and microphone.
Oh, yeah.
And join us. Here she is.
Hey.
Hey, Cady. So for those of our viewers who don't know, you've been on 2 space shuttle missions, and you lived for almost 6 months on the International Space Station, eh?
It's true.
I think the last time we all met in person was at one of the EG conferences. And it's great to be able to zoom in and connect with you today on Earth Day.
It's such a special day, and I think even more so now that more and more people are aware that, there's a lot to be done, and in terms of taking care of the place that hosts us and the place that is alive with us, and even more, what we can all be doing. Although I have to say, this week I've been a little more focused on Mars.
Yeah.
and I realize, we have Earth Day, but at some point, we're going to have Mars Day.
Well, it's one way to really appreciate Earth, to look at other places and see that this planet is alive. Others may have life, but there's nothing like this planet in the universe. And just before we move on, Katie, I've always wanted my hair to look like that.
Well, Sylvia, if you went to space, it would.
Yeah.
And Liz,
I know
would
mine
look
would be
awesome.
insane.
Fabulous.
You would look like a lion, Liz.
The lion, yeah.
Well, she does underwater too.
Yeah, I've had dolphins come up and kind of floss their teeth with it. And so
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I want to go swimming with you guys.
yeah.
let's make a date. Let's do it.
So I'm actually going to stop sharing my screen, hopefully, because you have some cool slides that you're going to share with us today.
I would love to. Let's see. Here we go. You never know exactly what's this going to happen when you
I know
these
it's
things, right?
always fraught with technological.
But
She can drive a spacecraft. You can drive a submarine.
But can we share a screen?
I don't know.
so do you see the space station?
Yes, we can. It's gorgeous.
Yes.
And this picture has like everything, I don't know, has everything in it. I mean, there's so much Earth. I mean, I like it because it lets people know how close we are really to the Earth, only about 275 miles away. I mean, it's really not so far, and yet certainly it's space, which is anything above about 50 miles. But this particular picture is really special because it is, it's a picture of the Space Shuttle on the left-hand side. You see it kind of hanging off the end of the stack, as we call it.
Yeah.
And then you're looking kind of end on at that space station. That space station is like a football field long in front of us. But what we're looking at is the place that we live. This is all the modules strung together, and the Soyuz and the Progress that the supply ship and ships that we would go up in. I went up with the Russians or a Russian and an Italian. And this is the only time that we have undocked a vehicle from the space station while the shuttle was present. And so actually only 3 humans have ever seen this picture with their own eyes. And my crewmate, Paola Nespoli, took this photograph. And it's just so important to have, I think, images of things that are really important to you, to help people, to kind of put everybody on the same page and realize how special things are.
Right.
And so I love that iconic photograph and that Paolo took it. But I love that Sylvia mentioned the habitat. And Sylvia, I love that picture of the grouper, because these are like the guardians of the habitat.
Mhm.
And that picture is very beautiful and detailed, but it didn't quite give scale. I mean, these groupers are like 3 feet long, or I mean, I might be exaggerating. No. And so this is like, if you look right here where my pointer is, that's our window. It's about 3 feet in diameter at the kitchen table. I'll show it to you in a second. But then this place back here, this is the bunk room. And so I was here for 11 days, which I just really, really loved, on a NASA mission. We call it NEMO with 2 E's, the NASA Extreme Environment Mission Operation, I believe. And really, being down there, it is everything that you do in a space mission. I mean, it's the best way to practice for us. Absolutely. Because it is, I mean, we have a timeline. We usually have a mission. Ours was tele-robotic surgery. I'm like on each other, and which I hope not. We had very, but actually it was for practicing surgery, for on the way to Mars. Can that surgeon direct you and everything like that? But then you have a timeline, and if you're done with what you were supposed to do, you should look around and see if any of your crewmates need help. And if nobody needs help, then you should grab a camera and you should be taking pictures and video to capture what they're doing, both for technical reasons and for sharing reasons. And they had better be good pictures. Mm-hmm. And if you're done with that, you should be organizing, sharing, and calling home. And so, there's just really no end to the things you need to do. There's also the barracudas, right?
Oh, yes, beautiful. Love them.
This is the front door of Aquarius, because this is underneath. It's kind of like, this habitat has an umbilical from the surface, and it's putting all the air in there, and the air kind of bubbles out the bottom. So our front door is really on the bottom of the habitat there. But back here, I meant to show where the groupers used to hang out here by our sleeping windows. So the bunks are here. And I'm a sort of a night person, and I would always go to bed late. And then before I went to bed, I'd look out the window and the groupers would be there.
Yes.
And it's almost as if they were waiting for me to go to bed. Which I just really,
Yeah,
really-
they're such curious animals. We often say they're like the Labrador retriever of the sea.
you know,
Yeah.
I did not trust the barracudas to be a Labrador.
Yeah, the
Um,
barracudas are a little, maybe they're the Dobermans of the sea, but
But they really we're not on their menu.
no,
And they're curious as they can be.
yeah,
I don't know of anyone who's ever been harmed by a barracuda, but I know a lot of barracuda who have been harmed by us.
yeah. I remember when I was about 10 years old, we were in kind of murky water down in the Florida Keys, and I swam like face first into about a 10-foot barracuda. I mean, I like hit him right in the face, and he
Really?
hit me right in the face, and I just saw his teeth, and he went, ah, and I went, ah. We both went opposite directions, and it was all good.
That's you.
Yeah.
Actually, what I
Beautiful
really,
fish.
what
Yeah.
I really loved about being there, I told people it was almost better than space, although actually space was, I really loved space. But, you know, you looked out the window and there was a whole world out there, and it was clear that you were in someone else's world. And I just stopped sharing for a second so we can see each other. But you know, to me, it was alive. It was the food chain in action. And out in space, it is beautiful and it is a world. But I mean, that I saw, we didn't have any visitors. No one was waiting around at the window to see before I went to sleep. And so to be in a place that's so alive and get to just live there and not have to come up to the surface after a little bit and just to feel at home.
Yeah.
You get to know the fish faces. You get to see them as personalities, instead of just lumps of meat.
Do you see like the same fish having like a different personality on different days?
Yeah.
Sometimes, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
definitely. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, they can even see, they'll have different behavior, you know, like if a storm's coming in, something like that, they can really sense these things.
No, but
And plus, I was gonna, go ahead. Well, just the advantage scientifically, and actually Sylvia and Liz can speak to this better, but if you're just diving and doing some research, you know, you might be able to stay down an hour or two over the course of, I mean, you know, with surface intervals, and here you could, I mean, you could be out there for, you know, 8 hours, right?
The same as like
I've
in a
done that.
small submersible, you know, you can you can just kind of hunker down on bottom and use it like a little observation blind.
A mini underwater laboratory.
Yeah. So it's
For me, it had particular significance getting to do this training exercise because my dad had been the supervisor of diving for the Navy he wasn't the supervisor during the CLAB program, but he was part of the CLAB program. He was the project officer for CLAB 3, you know, making all the modifications and things like that. And so I grew up thinking that exploring was real and that it was kind of normal to think that you would go someplace that was kind of dangerous, that not everybody went, and explore it and go for others, sort of thing. But I can't say that I grew up thinking that I could be one of the explorers, because in that Navy world and in the world of the space program, I was born in 1960. And I would see pictures of the Mercury 7 in front of that airplane, and I thought the airplane looked pretty cool. But seeing a bunch of white guys that are older than I am with very short hair didn't say, hey, this could be you.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And so it was a later discovery for me, and a story that I like to tell. It was a later discovery for my dad too. Kind of like, really? You're gonna do that? I was like, Dad, they're interviewing 100 people, and I'm one of them. He's like, really? And I'm like, really? Not like, not like he'd ever said you shouldn't or you couldn't or doubted my capabilities. It just was beyond his ability to see, and I think a lot of, it's a pretty, it's pretty operational world there. But I think the pretty wonderful news is, even though he's retired, a lot of people stay friends in these kind of communities.
Right.
And I think he went back there and said, we've been missing like half the population.
Right.
And I think one selection later, a woman Navy diver was selected as an astronaut, which is Heidi Stefanish Piper.
Excellent.
So, Cady, you knew George Bond, or certainly your dad did, who was known as the top side, kind of the guru behind the CLAB project. After the tech type program that I participated in 1970 with an all-woman crew, a couple of years later, he's kind of a big gruff guy, and he said,
as they are. right?
Yeah,
I mean, he was,
right.
he was just quintessential Navy guy. And he said, you know, I really didn't object to having women as a part of that program, but I did object to having you. I said, what?
Hello?
So, well, you girls did really well, girls. And I really want to say that I'm glad that they accept you, but you know, you're a mother, and if something had happened to you, it would have really brought the program down.
Wow.
You know, that it's taken a that's a
Almost.
it's a serious, you know, conversation
Yeah.
where I tell people, I mean, you know, the same thing does come up, and you know, everyone feels their own way. You know, there are some people that say, I don't want to do, you know, that have done some risky things and then decide that once they're parents, they don't choose to. And we gave a lot of thought. I did my shuttle missions before I had a child, and we gave it a lot of thought as a family when I got selected for the station program, because it was literally a 5-year commitment of spending a lot of time away from our son.
Mhm.
And you know, I thought about it a lot and just decided that this was really who Jamie's mom was,
Right.
and that it was just something that we were going to do as a family. But what would be but people say, you know, didn't you mind like leaving, you know, leaving your kid on the earth? And I'm like, of course I
Yeah.
did.
Yeah, no
And
kidding.
you know, and but they don't tend to ask the guys there, which is really an injustice to both men and women, in that,
Right.
Yeah.
you know, I got a lot of my really great sort of virtual parenting tips from my guy crewmates, right? How to do homework. I can do, you know, virtual algebra homework with the best of them, and geometry and all those things, reading, you know, just doing all sorts of homework because of the tips that I got from my my crewmates. But those are hard things. I'm going to keep going with slides.
Yeah.
Please.
Let's go back to
More
Karen.
things I want to ask Sylvia and Liz about. And so I have kind of a little hodgepodge, not too many. And let's see, here we go. This is just more Nemo. One of the things we did was just looking at, say, lunar operations. And, you know, something we should talk about in a bit, Sylvia, is equipment. Because but I'll skip that for right now. This is inside the habitat, so we're looking out that window, and there's the Explorers Club flag above us. This is our crew member who's a hand surgeon, and we were doing telerobotic surgery. So
I
he,
know him. Yeah.
oh, do you?
Yes. Ken.
Yes, Ken. Yeah, I was actually trying to remember. I'm sorry to have forgotten his last name. Really neat guy, and we learned a lot, and he was a good coach for understanding how to do things up there. I mean, down there.
You're
And
good to have around the worst case situation, right?
plus, I know if something happens, and this is us with one of the little robots that was driving around on the surface there, and I thought this might look a little bit more like diving clothes to you and Liz.
Yeah.
That's it.
Although I'm actually wearing one of my, I'm wearing a shirt that I wore in space on my first, on my second shuttle mission. And so I thought that was pretty fun to bring it under the ocean. And I also, I see James and Willie here are our habitation techs. So they're really the people who are running the whole system, and they have the bottom 2 bunks. And, you know, we're really learning about how to live in this kind of environment. And they took us on a tour of the habitat, and they said, okay, here's the deal. Our bunks are on the bottom because we need to get to things, but our bunks are not your stepping stones. You know, you have to get into your bunks without climbing on ours. I mean, this would be just like, I mean, it's our bed, it's our little home, you know, and I mean, so you have to, you know, go, it might be the long way, it might be the hard way, but you don't step on anybody's bunk. I was like, okay. And it's really a great lesson for space as well, that, you know, you don't leave anything on their bunks because it was the easiest place to fling something. That would be me. And so it was really interesting to learn those things, but also a lot of the folks that ran the habitat were former Navy divers who knew my dad. And at the time, my dad was ill with cancer, and he wasn't the kind of guy that would have wanted anyone to know that at the time, but it was really meaningful to both of us that I could do that. And they still wore the experimental diving unit t-shirts that were like coveted by my brothers and sisters and I. So that was pretty fun. I was going to just mention that I got to go to another extreme, which is to spend 2.5 months, 6 weeks of which was in a tent in Antarctica, about 200 miles from the South Pole. And I am not a camping girl. These are my crewmates. There's Diane from Massachusetts, UMass Dartmouth. And oh my goodness, I'm actually really just blanking on names here. I'm sorry, it's just a long day. But this is Johnny Scott in the multicolored outfit there, and Dean from NASA, who was looking at our expedition like we were collecting meteorites. What if you were working on the moon? How much of your time is spent working? How much is spent collecting? And this guy, Johnny, had already basically led 26 Antarctic missions, or been leading them for 26 years. This is about a 1.5-minute little video. It goes pretty fast, but it shows you just a little bit of everything. And I'll race through so I'm be sure we get to
Good.
things.
This is,
I really loved it in your in your TED talk when you said that space belongs to all of us. And it's just such an important thing to think about, and again, bringing that back to the ocean.
if it belongs to anybody, it belongs to all of us. It's like the ocean. If it belongs to anybody, we have this very self-centered view that it's all about us. In a way it is, because we have this magnified impact on everybody else. Again, I love your hair.
I liked the flying around and the floating around. I mean, the fact and the hair actually was
fluting around, fluting around,
Fluting around.
flouting around.
but the hair actually doesn't get in your way, which is sort of nice. Down here, it's always getting tucked behind my ears. And so this is a great thing to look at on Earth Day.
Yeah, beautiful.
Right. Oh my.
I mean, looking out the window, and I like this, through a window. It's kind of like seeing the wing of the airplane, or seeing the ship in the water. The edge of the ship. That it reminds you that it's humans doing that work.
Mhm.
And the humans are there and looking down. This film here is sped up, but you see that really thin atmosphere and how much of our Earth is oceans. And I really echo what you were saying, Liz, about how space belongs to all of us. I mean, I felt like that because when I launched from the Earth and you go up to space, you think you're going to go somewhere else, and you realize that the Earth is just bigger than you thought. I mean, you're still an Earthling, and you are still part of, really just part of Earth, right?
Right.
And I think we can talk about it more, but the fact that space belongs to all of us, the oceans belong to all of us, that's the wonderful part. But it's also easy to think that somebody else will do the work, somebody else will make those hard decisions, figure out how to, in our case, how to make less space debris, how to figure out when we go to these places, the moon and Mars, who's going to decide like what's okay to do. What's okay to say, this is mine. It's sometimes constructive to say, hey, this is my bunk. Don't put things on there because you've got an important operation going on there. But then when is that territorial? But I'll just run through. This is in honor of you guys. This is my 50th birthday, and it's the day before my launch up to the space station. And this is me in my spacesuit, and Sylvia promised that we would discuss at some point equipment and whether it fit her. Because I just look at you, Sylvia, you're like this really tiny person. And I know the guys that used to come over to our house for tuna casserole, okay? And their nicknames were Black Bart and Goliath, right?
Yep.
I mean, these are big people. Goliath used to pick me up from like my cheeks and put my head on the ceiling. And they had a hard time taking this picture because the spacesuit is like so much bigger than me. And our suits weigh about 300 pounds. It looks a little tinier up there, but they weigh about 300 pounds. And I'm actually very proud of the fact that I'm not proud at all to be the smallest person on the space station, to be part of the spacewalk team. Because on the Space Shuttle, we actually had a number of women doing spacewalks very capably. Kathy Thornton for the Hubble, Kathy Sullivan, some of them were small, some of them were not. But when you took away that small spacesuit, we basically took away made it so about 2/3 of the women were too small to fit in the spacesuit. And I am right on that border, or just decided I had a different idea of eye level. And I'm happy to have, spent a lot of time, garnered a lot of partners, put people on my team like, okay, this is hard, but you know what? If I'm not good enough at this, when I get up to that space station and I can't be on the team, we all lose. And so I'm proud that recently we had the 2 women spacewalkers there.
So in the gym suit that I use that looks a lot like an astronaut suit, it was built for a big commercial diver.
Mhm.
And they had to take a segment out of the leg so I could touch the bottom. And I could only use one arm at a time because the arms were too long. So I could lean this way or I could lean
And
that way.
those had the kind of a claw with a little T handle thing at the end. You know, you had to really reach in to use the
Yeah.
claws.
Squeeze
Yeah,
the
Yes.
handle to
squeeze the
close
handle.
that
Yeah.
close the jaws.
And so it was
Use that same technique, actually,
Yeah.
because, you know, the suit arms itself could give me some reach if I did
yeah.
that, right? But you lose when you're trying to do stuff here really hard, right?
It's exactly right. So
Yep.
human factors, it's really critical when we're either operating deep in the sea or high in the sky.
It's one of the
Mhm.
reasons with our Deep Hope submersibles that, you know, she's had so much input to it, is like, it needs to be like this so that we can get, you know, so kids can go, so I can go, so we can have, you know, just a big variety of people able
Mhm.
to utilize the technology. And you
And-
really do wear a lot of the technology oftentimes,
Right.
and it's got to be adaptable to a variety of sized people.
And so simple to operate that even a scientist can do it.
That's right.
We call that astronaut proof, right? But
Kinda like
you know,
screen
I mean, so many of these, I mean, your career depends on it, really. You know, to be
Yeah.
able to do, and so not to not have equipment that fits your work. And you know, Kathy Thornton, I was on a crew with her for my my first mission on STS-73, a lab mission. And when I was the contingency spacewalking person, like if there are two of us, if something broke, we would go out and fix it. And so when I went to be in the pool for the first time, she took me aside and she goes, okay, here's the deal. The first thing they're going to have you do is stand up. And I brought my bunny for this. Okay. So you're going to stand up on your feet, and you're gonna be at the back wall of the shuttle, and they're gonna have you slip your feet into the foot restraint. And so you're going to be holding on with your little arms, right? Hold on, and you're going to put your feet in these foot restraints. But for you, we're going to make them move those things up, because if not, what would be happening is I would be like leaning forward so far to get there that now my feet are like this, and there's no way I'm going to be sliding them in. And what happens, and actually I had already been through this and had a hard time. And so she was really fixing, not the first time, but another try, where people are going, okay, just make sure your toe is in and then make that heel be flat. And they're all really well-meaning, but they're sort of like, I wonder why she can't do that. Where they're not thinking about the fact that you are leaned so far forward because your arms are short, right?
Right.
And I don't mean this in a militant way, but if you don't do the beginning things well, then people are already wishing to kind of because they just don't, you just don't seem like you'd be on that team to them. And
Right.
so, you know, I'm pretty proud of trying to pave that way where people will go, do you fit in that suit? I'm like, do you think that this fits in a small suit? I want a medium.
Yeah.
But Sylvia, you were bringing up, when do you live with equipment that doesn't fit because you just know that you yourself need to be there and need to be making those discoveries with people, that you need to be on the team, and when do you just say, draw the line and say, where is the equipment that fits us?
Right.
Mhm.
Well, being able to have the equipment so that is the ease of operate, call it user friendly, if you will, so that operating the equipment is not such a big deal. Your mind is free to do what you're there to do.
Right.
It can be, operating the equipment can be an end in itself, but the whole point is being there. So the
Right.
whole thing is
That's a
to
good point.
keep it as simple as possible. So I've heard it said, it's easier to train an engineer to be a diver than to train a diver to be an engineer. But you could say the same thing about a scientist. Basically, you can be schooled, trained, educated to do all sorts of things, but if it's not what you've done and you want to get from here to there, you ought to be able to make it simple.
So that you can just bring what you bring to that
your brain,
environment.
your experience.
Right. And as we bring more and more people to space, I think, I don't know. I mean, I have to actually think that, we've already had some success. I myself have not been in the Dragon capsule now that it's completely outfitted, but we're sending a crew up tomorrow morning. I'll show you them at the end.
Oh, nice.
And, and in space, this is a contractor that, NASA is contracted with SpaceX, but SpaceX also is selling, their missions to others. And there's a billionaire that bought a space mission, and they're going up to space, not to the space station, up to space. And he said, I don't think I should be doing this by myself. I think I should be bringing 3 people that couldn't buy these tickets.
Wow.
And I think that's right. And so he's bringing a physician's assistant from St. Jude's Hospital, a cancer survivor. He's bringing somebody that won. There was a lottery that if you even give like $1 to St. Jude's, you could be in the lottery. Someone won the lottery and gave that ticket to their best friend who
Wow.
works at Lockheed and always has done a lot of outreach. And then a community college professor, Dr. Cyan Proctor, who is an educator, an artist, all those things. And so this wild crew is going up in space. And so I have to think that they have made these interfaces so that people with a good head can use them.
Mhm.
Well, we want to democratize access to the sea so 10-year-olds can get down 1,000 meters underwater. Why not?
Yeah.
Why do you want to do that? What do you think we accomplished by doing that, Sylvia?
Well, because ignorance is probably the greatest problem with respect to taking care of the ocean. People don't know why they should care. And
Mhm.
exposure, getting them to experience and to meet a living ocean, to see what's going on, to see some of the problems, to see the trash we put into the ocean, to take fishermen down and see the damage that occurs when a net is dragged across the bottom.
Right.
Go see for yourself.
It is that same. I mean, we've talked about kind of the overview effect, right? That happens when people go to space, right? And there's,
Mhm.
I don't know, 500 or so.
Getting to
people
see
have
that whole big.
Right. And so I think there is an ocean analog to that as well. Because I mean, I know that when we've taken kids before down in submersibles in Hawaii, they just
It's transformative.
it is transformative. They just
Yeah,
light up.
really.
And of course, because there are lots of living creatures out there for
Mhm.
them to observe and to interact with, whether it's a grouper or stingray or whatever it happens to be, those animals are curious and they come over and they want to, check you out. And you had the experience of the pelagic octopus. It was just suckering the dome of the submersible. And, so they want to know, what is this thing? And so, those kinds of experiences really are transformative. We had another guy was in one of the little single person submersibles we were using, and a swordfish came out of the blue, just rocketing past, and then suddenly just put all its fins out and stopped, like slammed on the brakes, hooked around, came back and checked it out with that big softball size eye, flashing these blue bars and just lit up looking, what are you? What are you? What are you? And that guy came back and he says, I will never eat a swordfish again. I can't do it. I won't do it. And because he had seen that animal alive in all of its
Glory.
strength and glory, it was like encountering a tiger in the forest. It was just
Yeah.
life changing,
Yeah.
as you say. And that's really what drives us to want to get more people into the ocean, so we understand why it's worth protecting,
Like divers.
and why it's so important to get people to space as well, so they can kind of see that opportunity to look at the change that we've made to the earth, all the human impacts,
And like you, sharing the view.
and sharing that view.
Imagine if you came back and said, well, that was nice. And you kept it all to yourself.
But I love that this guy is taking, kind of ordinary people.
I know.
It's
Me
just-
too.
I wish that I-
This is so these ugly feet are not mine. Okay, these are Scott Kelly's ugly feet. But I love this picture, and I like the intersection. I mean, if you look over on the right, you can see the Nile Delta, and so here's the Nile.
Right.
Yeah. Yep. And so it's the Sinai Peninsula. I mean, it's just things from a different point of view, but you see the edges of the earth. But this takes the intersection of somebody who's up there and also has enough skills with a camera to take a picture that's in focus, both the earth and their feet. And I love this, and we have a lot of pictures out of the cupola, but I love this one because it shows the human as part of it. And so you see, I mean, with a view like this, I mean, how in the world could you think that a border is sort of like a non sequitur.
I know.
Like, we're all from the same place. I love the bumper stickers that say E, like Earth, like we're from Earth. I mean, because, when we,
Where are you from? Earth.
Earth,
We're
what
all
are we?
team members,
We are
right?
all Earthlings, as my colleague Nicole Stott likes to say. that we are all earthlings. And this is Tracy Caldwell Dyson, who took this picture. It's a self-portrait, and it's one of my favorite space pictures ever, because I think it is the epitome of someone, a person in their relationship with the earth.
Right.
And also, if you look, this is kind of interesting to me. If you look, it's like she's looking down at the earth and is sort of like surfing over the earth, right? Look at her body position there, sort of over. Whereas here, we're just kind of looking up at the earth.
Right.
That makes sense? Or down at the earth, but we're not going around the earth. It doesn't feel like we're going around the earth in this picture. It just feels like we're looking at the earth. But Tracy, you realize that you are really, surfing around the earth. And I put this in here for you, Sylvia, because this is it's a cartoon or a drawing, and it says Katherine Johnson, NASA legend. Actually, her maiden name was Coleman. So I feel a certain kinship. And she is a mathematician who was part of understanding or calculating the trajectories for Mercury, Gemini, Apollo, and the Space Shuttle. How are we going to get people from Earth out to space and back again? And it's a true story that John, when they were first having the big IBM computers that won't fit in the door, and I really urge you to watch that movie, Hidden Figures. I think it's really
great, wonderful,
great
a lot of the joy. And it is always about the women's bathroom, by the way. Okay. Anyways, I just think that, so the story that John Glenn said, I'm not climbing in that capsule until you get that woman, the smart one, to do those calculations again. And so, on her shoulders, all of us are going to space. And I wish I had thought to do it, but I would take the staircase and I would make it be upside down, and it would be a staircase descending into the ocean. And you would be the person that drew that staircase, Sylvia. So I thought I would just finish. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'll go back.
Deep praise, which I don't really deserve, because it's been a team for sure. I've just been along for the ride. It's great sometimes to be there first, but that's not the point. It's just to get there and hope that others will join them.
I agree so much. And in that spirit, these are 4 of the people. There's actually 7 right now up in space. So this is the crew that went up on the SpaceX Crew 1 trip. And so it is Shannon Walker and Victor Glover from left to right, Mike Hopkins and Soichi Noguchi. Soichi's from Japan. And look at Soichi's shoulder here. You see his patch. It doesn't have any names on it, because their mission was one that was accomplished during the pandemic, and it's really just took so much effort on the part of so many. And this first mission, which is the start of a new way and a more flexible way of going to space with SpaceX and eventually other companies as well, is that it wasn't Crew 1. That's the official name of the mission, is Crew 1. It's the first crewed mission of the Dragon capsule. But this Dragon patch, which has got a dragon on it, they call it U1, because this is everyone's mission, not just theirs. And so they're up there. They walked out of this same doorway. See the NASA signs there and the doorway there? That upstairs is the crew quarters that we stay in before launch. And I myself, when I launched on the shuttle, I walked out of that same doorway. The Mercury, Gemini, and Apollo astronauts and Skylab walked out of that doorway. So it's really quite hallowed ground, I think, and just such an amazing tradition to be in. And tomorrow, probably about 3 a.m. In the morning, so just really less than 12 hours from now, 4 more people are going to walk out of that doorway. This is them. And they are going to launch at 5:50. I'm knocking on wood, because you always have to knock on the wood. 5:50 in the morning Eastern time. This is Megan MacArthur, arm operator for the Hubble mission. This is Thomas Pesquet from France. This is a European Space Agency astronaut, Aki Hoshiri from Japan, and Shane Kimbrough from the US. And so they are Crew 2, the second crew module. And this is their rocket. Just taken this morning. This is a sunrise picture.
Oh, beautiful.
Isn't Megan the commander of that, the engineer?
She is. Yes, she is. And she is, I mean, there are some people that are just have a bigger picture. They're smart, they're wise, they're great at the small picture, the big picture. And Megan and I have worked together, and I have I have backed her up. I have worked with her. I have worked for her. She has worked for me. And it's she's a phenomenal star. But actually everyone here is, and they've all lived on the space station before. So this is going to be a crew that gets to work and gets a lot done. And the next crew the other crew will come down after just a little bit. And then I was just going to, at the end here, I think it is the end, is it? Yes. I was just going to show, because I think it's some of the things that we're going to talk about. I'm part of a podcast. I have a part-time job as a professor of the practice and the Global Explorer at Arizona State University. And we have a podcast that just came out about a month ago, and it's called Mission Interplanetary. And I'll read you, it says, where few space podcasts have gone before as we look at the big questions. I mean, this is where the questions that we think about for Earth, for sustainability, for the responsibility that we have for our planet, these are the same questions that we need to ask for space and for going further. When we get there and how we get there, how will we do that? We've got a fantastic episode on space debris coming up, because the reality is that if we don't cooperate and teach each other how to make sure we build spacecraft to not break apart into so many pieces, we're going to ruin space. We're going to make it so that we cannot get through space in a safe way. And so we're looking at all those things. I have a marvelous co-host from England named Andrew Maynard. And the two of us, just have real conversations with, people I think are fascinating. And I think there's a phenomenon. I mean, I'm space and you're oceans, even though I love oceans, you're really oceans. But I think there's something that we have in common, that is that in these extreme environments, and I have to say probably more so for space, when somebody thinks they need to invent something for space, they feel compelled, and the team is drawn, and the funding comes, and things are developed. And the only thing that helps me sort of say, well, I guess that's part of the way the world works, is that so many of the things that are developed are actually really, really good for Earth as well.
Right.
Understanding some scientific phenomena that are going to help us certainly with oceans, in terms of understanding how liquids behave, understanding how plants grow, understanding life. Literally every biology experiment that we do up there turns out a little differently than we think. And so and especially growing plants and understanding how to grow them in places that are hard to grow. It's led to vertical farming in cities. It's led to understanding how to grow crops in places where we don't have enough water or enough light. And so I think that is some comfort. And at the same time, I'm excited that that there's really been a lot of, but not enough progress on climate change and on recognizing what the oceans contribute there.
Right. Well, Liz, with her role, is head of an engineering company, Deep Ocean Exploration and Research, DOER Marine. The parallels between what works up in space and what works underwater, and it goes both ways. Developments that have really facilitated going high in the sky have trickled down, if you will, or are being applied underwater. But life support, manipulator technology, human factors, just so many things that are in parallel.
Right.
And we really need to do more of this up and down business.
Yeah, we do. And it's, it's really interesting to me that, we engineer
With
rockets
robotics
and submersibles and robotics and all the things that we can do. And, how do we, all these things we do to take our little fragile selves into these hostile places and back and do experiments and things there. But we sometimes have a really tough time understanding how important these natural systems that are right here provided for us on Earth, we're just kind of take those for granted. And how do you get people to understand that those natural systems are really keeping all of us alive on this spaceship, this Earth? And you've always said that, as we draw down these natural resources and we just kind of look at them as resources instead of looking at them as our life support system.
Yeah.
And sort of the small steps that have been taken to help protect those systems.
We've got to do more.
We've got to do more. You're
Fast.
saying, so what is it? 30% by 2030?
2030.
2030.
Yeah.
All these shifting baselines out there. Like how much of it do we really protect, or what is it? How much can we draw things down before we really get in trouble? I mean, from being in a space station or in a habitat, you're paying attention to those things all the time. You know, these are the life support systems. How much is O2 here? How much of this is here? What are we going to do with the wastewater? You
What's
know,
the first thing we're going to run out of? What's
Yeah.
critical?
all those critical things. And sometimes we just seem that we're really taking these natural systems for granted in a big way.
Complacency.
It's
Yeah.
complacency, or to your point, that someone else is going to deal with it.
Well,
need active participants.
Right. Well, and I think that the more we can help people understand, I mean, it's easy to sort of look at the space environment and see a space station and 6 people in it and say, wow, how'd you get along? How'd you get stuff done? You know, and because it's clear to them that there's only the 6 of you. And if you don't figure it out, it's not going to happen.
Right.
And that means both you may be personally figuring it out, or you enabling a crewmate to figure it out. And you know, sharing solutions and things like that. But it's really clear that there's only these few people. But I think that a view that you have from being down in the ocean, where you understand really just what it is, how big it is, and yet how fragile it is, that's a mission as well.
Yeah.
You know, that like we look down from space and we see the Earth, and to me it looks like one spaceship, and the whole crew of Spaceship Earth is right on Spaceship Earth, except for 6 people. So
Yeah.
I think it's easy to see this as a spaceship with a mission where every crew member is critical. But I think one thing that deters people from going, I'm a member of this crew and I'm going to do something, is that people don't always know what to do. And the problems seem so hard and so unsurmountable. And I think sharing solutions doesn't happen very efficiently. And that's why I actually love programs like yours. I mean, you do a lot of sharing of avenues that people can pitch in or teach each other. And
Yeah.
We have some questions actually of people who would like to know what are we going to do?
Yeah, we can move on into questions. But one thing I'd like to tell people to try to do is keep a home aquarium. You know, it's like this little thing you can do, but that's a life support system. And if you get too many fish in there, you get the wrong species of fish in there, or you don't change the filter, you let the water evaporate down too far, you know, havoc will happen. And it's just a really easy thing.
It's a microcosm.
Yeah, it's a simple thing that people do.
But we shouldn't be stripping the reefs to get these colorful little fish
No,
for your entertainment.
You can
choose your fish wisely.
You can just keep algae if you want to. If you don't keep a healthy tank, it's going to just turn on you. And it's a nice analog for looking at
there's an MIT Media Lab experiment about growing plants that I wonder if there's a sort of algae tank or fish tank analogy where you could control the conditions. And this was like for classrooms, for like elementary school classrooms, where they could go, okay, we're going to make this have, you know, low CO2. We're going to make this have a certain temperature. And so they're getting to see what happens to their plants that they planted. Right. And yet it was just something where the variables were easy to control. And it would be interesting to be able to build in maybe some of the, like 1 or 2 of the most critical kind of questions.
Yeah.
For the ocean.
Cool. You know, to be able to do that. But it's you always kind of keep a healthy tank, you know.
Keep a healthy planet.
Keep a healthy planet, you know.
Yep.
All right. So we've got some questions. Let's see. The first one is, your point of view in Seaspiracy is really great. And being deeply in love with the ocean, I want to help in saving our oceans. Can you advise on how to approach to make them understand and help marine lives?
I guess that one falls in my lap, but it should be something that we can all address. I think there's something about respect for life that if we had, I want to think of it as empathy.
And I'm having you're a little broken up.
We can hear you fine.
I can hear you, but we couldn't hear you. I don't think.
No. We'll start over
now.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I can, but
Yeah.
but I'm not sure people heard that answer.
Well, let me just state it in a slightly different way, and all of us, we can all weigh in, but Seaspiracy, if you haven't seen the film, it's worth watching. It's a little hard on some really good conservation organizations, but the central theme is spot on, that we are treating the ocean with such lack of respect, especially life in the ocean, treating wildlife in the sea as products. Just if we had a greater dose of empathy, and it's not just for life in the ocean, it's life. I mean, life is a miracle. Earth is a miracle. Here on Earth Day, think about, in all of the universe, where is there a place with a 4.5 billion year history of fine tuning, and it's alive, and we couldn't exist without the rest of life over very long periods of time, shaping the atmosphere, creating a hospitable planet, one that works in our favor. And yet, think about it, 4.5 billion years to get to where we are, and it's taken us about 4.5 decades, the last half century, to unravel the very systems that we need to go forward and have a prosperous existence. And what you're doing, Cady, up in the sky, what some of us, you also doing down in the ocean, it's maybe for the first time, the last best time we'll ever have to take the knowledge we have and safeguard Earth. Your perspective up there in the sky, on one hand, it looks really big. You look out and here's this huge mass of, that's our home, but it's, and then you think when you get off to the moon, or to see that view that was taken from Voyager at the edge of our solar system, looking back, what Carl Sagan described as that pale blue dot, we're really small. And this is all there is, and we have to work together to take care of it. What Seaspiracy, I think, really highlighted is how we are just being so thoughtless, mindless about what we're doing to other creatures and our life support system, how we trash this planet in such a short time. And we think it's okay. It's not okay. We can do something about it, but we have to hurry.
Right. And it's just that, chock-a-block consumption, it just, more, and just extract everything and not really giving back. It's not sustainable.
Yep. I remember, I mean, it's sort of a silly example, but like up on the space station, the thought of using like a whole wet wipe at once, like if you didn't need to, I mean, why would you do that? And, paper towels and Kleenex and I mean, everything, food. I mean, you just really, supplies were that. And I think so many of the lessons that, we're learning down here, both about having been short-sighted and at the same time, how to be creative about figuring out solutions to change the rate and to change where we are now. Those same lessons really are imperative for us to take forward as we become an interplanetary species. And get the moon, I mean, the moon is an example where, I mean, to me, it's pretty wonderful to think about. I mean, I look at the moon differently right now. I look up there and to think that we're going to be there soon, and that women are going to be there. That I really love that. And it's this place that's, I mean, it's ours meaning a big ours, right? And yet one of the things that's really practical about the moon, and for us going further as a species, which I think we are meant to do, is that we probably need to mine the soil, the lunar regolith, to be able to make oxygen as fuel to go further. Because the biggest thing, the hardest thing to do is to leave Earth's gravity. And so once we get to the moon, we've actually done that hard part. So if we could use that as a fueling station. And so who decides, about how much and where, and, what are the limits, and actually when, how do we make sure that we're understanding from the very beginning, what does this do when we make these changes to the environment?
Yeah.
Nobody thought about such things not so long ago. So it's just Earth, all of the living Earth and the minerals as well were just there for us to use for whatever we thought at the moment, our little brief time in all the history of the world, to chop down 1,000-year-old trees, that was okay.
Mhm.
Now deep sea mining, million-year-old lumps that are still living, formed by bacteria, by microbes, that it's okay to disrupt it when we don't have answers to the questions that, so what's going to be the consequence?
Mhm.
Shouldn't we want to know
Yeah.
before we just, plunge
Obliterate.
forward? And the same is true with all of life in the sea. We didn't ask with whales, except what is their value for pounds of meat and barrels of oil? That's the only way we saw them for centuries.
Mhm.
We are beginning to have a different kind of respect and to see values that transcend what we think of at the moment is useful to us, as if it's all about us. And I think we're entering this new era. I mean, we have to,
Right.
or we're going to be done.
Yeah.
Well, you were mentioning some pretty good news here the last couple days about climate and oceans.
Yeah, I mean, today, the conference has taken place now in Washington, with the president getting 40 global leaders together to address climate change and to not just renew the commitment for the Paris Agreement, but to go further and to say that this country will be leading again in terms of this really crucial need if we are to have a civilization going
Mhm.
forward. You think about what I gave a TED talk once too, Katie, and when I did, a guy came up afterwards and said, I think I understand. If we fail to take care of the ocean, and you could say if we fail to take care of nature,
Mhm.
nothing else matters, because everything we care about is really related to our life support. You get it being up in the sky, life support. You do
Mhm.
everything you can to learn about it, and then you do everything you can to take care of it. And we have done neither with our life support system, Earth. We're starting to try to learn more, and we're starting to try to take care of it more effectively. But we, it's like Yoda said, no, try, do.
Right. Right.
Absolutely. We've got to.
So
We've got a
And
few
so
more
that
questions.
I was going to say, but today, you were mentioning that for the first time, oceans are, even though it seems pretty clear that the ocean is part of sustainability and how, how the Earth is thriving, that they're bringing that into the climate change.
Yeah.
it's the living ocean. It's the water matters, the water with temperature and
Mhm.
currents that flow around the world, shaping the habitable planet that we have. But it's the living planet, generating oxygen, capturing carbon, follow the carbon. The economists want to follow the money. I say follow the carbon.
Hmm.
The money is
Mhm.
secondary.
Yeah.
Follow the
Taking
water.
notes, Sylvia.
Yeah. Everybody
I
knows.
am. I am.
It's
But when you say follow the carbon, how do you think about that?
well,
It's
it's
the living systems.
yes, we're all carbon-based units. Spock said that, I believe.
Yes, he did.
And
Yeah.
and it's photosynthesis, the green stuff that captures carbon, generates oxygen, and the carbon goes from the photosynthesizers to animals. We don't photosynthesize. Darn, wouldn't it be nice to be green? I think Kermit the Frog said it's hard to be green, but
Oh.
anyway, it would be, we need the photosynthesizers as animals, but consider the great diversity of life that animals give back in a natural system. There's no waste,
No
in
excess.
no excess either in a natural system.
Mhm.
At the World Economic Forum in 2020, the International Monetary Fund, curiously, did a study about the value of whales as carbon-based units.
Hmm.
They feed on krill or small fish that in turn feed on phytoplankton, the photosynthesizers, the carbon, follow the carbon. The whales, like big trees, they store the carbon in a forest. That carbon goes into the roots, into the soil, and we are beginning to respect that. In the ocean, it goes into the whales, into the tunas, into the swordfish, into the krill, into the copepods. ultimately that carbon sinks to the bottom of the ocean in a natural system. We move in with our big industrial fleets. We break those connections,
Mhm.
take the carbon-based units like clear cutting a forest, we're clear cutting the ocean, and we're breaking the links because these big whale units, the International Monetary Fund calculated, are worth at least $1 trillion in carbon
Wow.
dollars. And they give nutrients back to the phytoplankton that power the system,
The whole economy.
whole carbon economy, the
Right.
ocean economy, the
Right.
planetary economy. And most of the oxygen in the atmosphere comes and has over gazillions of years from the ocean, even before there were trees. The ocean photosynthesizers were pumping oxygen, capturing carbon, and shaping a planet that's favorable to us. I don't know what about this is so hard. Kids get it right away. We need the CEOs of corporations. Some
Hey
of them
now,
get it.
come on.
Some of them get it.
The other thing, or just thinking about the small fish as well. I mean, the whales obviously, big and charismatic, and people can get it. But right now we're looking at the situation of the small, the bristlемouth fish. These lanternfish, these little guys that they make up the huge amount of biomass in that
Carbon
in the deep carbon in the deep scattering layer. And right now they're being again targeted as being an underutilized resource, that we should be going out and running these massive trawls down and just extracting these guys out, grinding them up into meal in order to feed
Chickens.
aquaculture fish and chickens and pigs. It's like
cows.
What? And those fish, they have this incredible vertical migration, every day, every night. And so they're actively mixing these
The
nutrients and
Mhm.
kind of helping to accelerate that carbon sequestering action that happens in the ocean.
And it's groceries, it's food for migrating whales, for migrating tuna, for turtles, for sharks, the bigger carbon-based units.
Mhm.
But it's an intricate, really diverse network of life. And for us to think of them just as pounds of meat is just so primitive.
Short-sighted. Yeah.
And it just doesn't do justice to the intelligence that we think we have.
Absolutely. It's just kind of like, what are we thinking, or are we thinking?
To mine the ocean of life on this huge industrial scale is just taking bites out of our life support system.
Out of the
Right.
blue heart, right?
Yeah, really, literally. We can do better.
Let's grab a few more questions.
But it starts with knowing, which is what we're
I
trying to
agree. I agree.
Yeah. Let's get a question. Who
All
else?
right. Brenda would like to know, what was the biggest challenge living on the space station, and how did you adapt back to life on Earth?
There we go.
Biggest challenge was that there just was so much more work, good work, to be done than could be done, humanly done. And I think, to me that was frustrating because, we worked hard, and yet if you don't take a break, I used to think, well, I'm going to work every single weekend because, I can like rest when I get home. But actually, if you don't give yourself some kind of a break, then you're not the same efficient person. But it was always, you can actually just hear it in the description, always this balance between, we did experiments that, simply can't be done down here. And I think by having this microgravity or zero gravity environment, it gives us a different lens to examine some things like liquids. What do liquids really want to do? And there's a lot of tiny forces that control liquids, but down here with gravity, they are overwhelmed by gravity. And so understanding and understanding those forces helps us understand literally, flow through a pipe. The forces at the walls are more difficult to understand. And by having those forces be the only game in town, and that's why a blob of water is like a sphere up there. And we can understand, we even had a little acoustic chamber where there's sound waves where we would inject a drop and then use the sound waves to smush that drop and then let it go. So it's like a pancake, and then you let it go and it's going kabong, kabong, kabong. And then we actually loved it because we're tuning the knobs and making it be the certain shapes, and you feel very proud when you get it right.
Yeah.
But these would be drops made up of different materials, or maybe different amounts of surfactants, which, affect the surface tension and you get to see how fast does that migrate in and out from the surface. And so to me, it's basic research. And what will it be used for? I mean, so many things. It's everything from flow through a pipe to the behavior of liquids and water on a riverbank, filtering soil, Mother Nature making her own filters of water coming down and through, flow through our pipes, our veins, and our arteries, and medical experiments where you put a drop of something and watch it divide into things. This is where all those tiny forces come into play. So I really loved that. I mean, that's just one example. There's combustion, there's growing plants, there's all those things. And the fact that if you could just get a little more done, we would be a little bit more forward, forward in our progress. And I would imagine that Liz and Sylvia feel that way with, both the work that they do, but also then what can we be doing to change the planet?
Yeah, the
mission.
application. Yeah, how you can really get that more bang for the buck, I guess.
Yeah.
So
I think you might have said, what did you miss up in space when you came back to Earth? Peanut butter sandwiches?
chocolate.
Chocolate.
Actually, when you get to plan your care package or your care, actually your food, like most of it is like the same menu repeats every 9 days, and no one goes for the food. And I was up there with an Italian. Okay. And I mean, this was like difficult down to his soul. He's like, "Look, lasagna, all it was."
Yeah,
it's very funny.
Sandwich.
But people said, do not bring chocolate up there because there is so much chocolate up there. So I brought no chocolate, and then we got up there, and the supply ship was like months late, and there was not a drop of chocolate. That was a little hard. We missed a texture. We missed because we're with an Italian. We missed pizza, but all these things. I mean, we actually had some mission rearranging that was spoken about towards the end of our mission, and the thought of maybe staying longer. And I got to think about this, and I would have stayed another 6 months in a minute, because there is so much good work to do. It takes you about a month to get good at things. I don't know if that's true for submersibles as well, but just to get into that swing of things, and everything's floating around. And I mean, I could lose the TV remote twice in one night. We don't even have a TV, and I would lose it.
Like that.
So anyway, so you get good at it, and I just wanted to stay and get more done. And I figured, I really loved the mission.
The idea that when you say the properties of water under different circumstances, people might say, well, that's kind of nice, but what good is it? And I get this all the time underwater when you look at this incredible new creature. Yeah, that's okay. Can you eat it? Is it
What does it taste like?
Yeah. Instead of saying, right.
I wonder what else we're going to discover that it's good at. It's mimicking nature, building, in chemistry and biology, mimicking what nature already does so well. Listening to Native Americans who live, I think, a little bit or a lot more in tune with their environment, and they hear it and they see it and they feel it differently.
It's respect for all forms of life and what they do, and appreciate them for what they are, or these phenomena for what they are.
Yeah.
And yes, they may trickle into human applications that make a big difference, or a small difference, or no difference. But it doesn't mean that we shouldn't keep pressing the edge of wanting to know just because we want to know.
Right.
Exactly.
Look at the engineers, how long and hard they've been trying to create propulsion that comes anywhere near a tuna.
Right.
And yet, what do we do to tuna? We just look at them as pounds of protein, and we want to get all stabby with them with a harpoon, or get them up in a net and just suffocate them and put them out on a sushi buffet, or can them. And
they're miracles.
But they're miracles. And this is a warm-blooded animal that can go over 50 miles an hour sustained.
Really?
Yeah. And
I did not know that.
Global travelers.
they capture the little vortices that they generate when they move their tail back and forth,
Hmm.
and power. They according to the MIT engineers who studied tuna simulated in a wave tank,
Mhm.
on the order of 97% of the energy that they generate is captured to assist in their propulsion.
Mhm.
Our propulsion systems don't come anywhere close to that.
No.
Right.
We did.
Right.
But yeah, so I mean, we just got to keep out there and keep working on these things.
You had a question?
We have more questions.
Okay.
All right. This one I'm going to throw completely at you. Caroline wants to know, if you had the opportunity, where would you go in space, Sylvia and Liz?
To you
Oh.
too.
Where would you go?
Would you go?
Would you
Would
go?
I go? Of course I would.
But
Wouldn't
where would you go?
you?
This is the question.
If you could pick.
If you could
In
pick,
space?
Mhm.
I go someplace where there's water.
Does that include ocean space?
Inner space?
Inner space.
No.
If you
No.
could live, Sylvia, if you could live anywhere in the ocean, I mean, and live doesn't mean you have to be there forever, but let's just say someone gave you a budget, so to speak, of you have 200 days underwater and there's no logistical task. I mean, we've figured a magical way to put you underwater and you can just get to be there. What are the places in the ocean that you just want to go and be, or go and study, or?
Well, the answer is, of course, all of it. But I would love to actually spend time as a part of the deep scattering layer.
What does that mean?
It's the layer that is at the twilight zone. Liz described it as this migration of creatures
Mhm.
up and down.
Mhm.
Photosynthetic organisms turn away in the sunlight, and at night, the little guys in the deep sea between 100 and 1,000 meters migrate up toward the surface and chow down on all the goodies that have been generated by day.
Oh, interesting.
And then by day, this migrating horde of diverse forms of life. And one of our friends who uses a rebreather, like what you use in the spacewalk, to
Mhm.
go deep in the ocean. He goes to at least 100 meters, sometimes deeper,
Wow.
and into the twilight zone, into this almost dark, almost light during the day, and sees these creatures. And he's found as many as a dozen new species of fish per hour immersed in the twilight zone. And then there are all these jellies, all these other creatures.
Mhm.
And some of the most abundant forms of life on Earth that we do know are there, the bristlemouth fish,
Mhm.
the cyclothone, our fellow vertebrates that occupy this twilight zone. And just to see how they get along. I mean, seeing you and your buddies up in space, or when you're living underwater, I've experienced it, you've got to get along. And how do these guys get along? It's an eat and be eaten world, but it's a harmony. It's a harmony. There's no waste, there's no excess. It's just, this is the heart of the ocean pulsing. Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Movement up,
Right.
movement down. I also want to go down to the places that so few people have been personally. We sent robots, but not many,
Mhm.
into the places that are now up for grabs for deep sea mining.
Mm.
Mhm.
We don't know much about what's going on there, except that it's alive. And we're looking at it with the eyes of
Some people are going to be worried about what you just said. What's alive?
It's alive.
It's alive. The rocks are alive. These manganese nodules are alive. They're slow growing, microbes that take the minerals out of the ocean
Mhm.
and form these crusts that are now targeted for taking by companies. Leases are being allowed for mining interests. And in the next 10 years, if we allow this to go forward, we humans who are part of the crew, are we going to let a small number of vested interests extract from that which is really part of our world?
Belongs to everyone.
But if it belongs to anyone, it belongs to all of us,
Mhm.
or no one. But we are allowing a handful of vested interests to go out there and chop away, not knowing what the consequences are, but it doesn't look as though it's going to be good. first of all, you're going to sacrifice these unique forms of life that occur in certain areas and say it's okay. What good are they? They're just part.
They're underutilized resources. Yeah.
Or they're
Right.
they're
Part of
the
a system we don't understand yet, and maybe
bycatch.
it's the system that saves the planet.
Right.
Yeah.
When the industrial fishers go out and they are targeting tuna, or they're targeting the little fish in the deep scattering layer, or whatever it is, there's a lot of collateral damage. Bycatch
Okay. Mhm.
is hauled along, or just the habitat destroyed. Things that people they should care about it, but they don't know about it.
Mhm.
They don't see why they should care. They need
Right.
to follow the carbon. How
And
does
from a space point of view, I think, well, we're going to see we're going to need to learn these same lessons, and we don't want to go learn them again.
No.
We want to take the
Moon or
things that we
Mars or-
have learned about, settling a new world, not colonizing a new world, but settling a new world,
Right.
Sharing a new world, and how to,
Be
if you can't make
respectful.
decisions down here, you're not going to make good decisions up there either.
All
That's
right.
it. Making peace wherever we go, instead of creating mayhem wherever we go.
We've
Well, it's
got-
interesting to me, the science fiction shows, and some of them are ocean bound as well, right? But it's almost always about the people. It's different spacesuits, different ocean suits, different, things that are life critical or hard to do or easy to do. But it's all about, good people that either make good decisions or bad decisions, or are open to their teammates and
Right.
hearing what they have, what they bring. And then there's people, I'll say, maybe I won't say bad people, but people that in the show you're like, oh, that's a bad person, and yet sometimes they make really good decisions, that you don't expect. And so it all comes down to people, and that's why we watch these shows. I think it's very interesting to look at the very human decisions, and those are the things that we talk about in the podcast. Okay.
And Katie, when I think about all the other creatures on Earth, some of them, other than humans, are really smart. The biggest brain on the planet belongs to sperm whales.
Really?
Yeah, really. Big brain.
Big brain.
And they have language. They have social structure. They have communication.
Wow.
They have families. They have habits. Orcas, we're beginning to appreciate them for something other than pounds of meat, or
Mhm.
competitors for fish. It's another way of looking at them. So you kill the whales because they're taking our fish. That's an attitude that you see widespread. But here's the thing, none of them can see into the past the way humans can. And none of them can project a future in the way
Mhm.
that humans can, armed with what we know about the past,
Yeah.
to be able to think about what's the future we really want.
Mhm.
And how can we get from here to a better place, let
Right.
alone to get from here to Mars or someplace beyond.
All
I
right.
love how all these things are connected. I'm on the board of the Smithsonian's Natural History Museum,
Great
and
place.
it's of course been closed like many other places, but there's an exhibit that is relatively new where they refurbished like a third of the museum and the whole dinosaur exhibit, right? But the new exhibit is called Deep Time. And when you said, that, only humans have the ability to look back, and this is it's a fascinating exhibit. And because it really shows how we are able to look back and actually see the influence of people on our planet.
Right.
And there's dinosaurs, there's stuff for kids, there's stuff for adults. It is literally a climate change exhibit. And they've been great about making sure that all sorts of different people tell the stories, not just photographs of people that happen to be the ones who were recorded in history. I'm kind of all about the lost history of women and technical women. In fact, can I share a moment of this is a big week for Mars,
Oh,
where
please, let's do that.
the helicopter flew. Do you want me to show you real quick?
All right.
Please.
We've got a lot of, I don't know about, I don't know.
Oh, you have questions. Well, I'll just tell you real quick. So
Yes.
this week, the helicopter flew on Mars.
Huh.
And so it's amazing because it has about 1% of our atmosphere. So this is going to be a different kind of jigsaw puzzle, right, for sustainability, where planes and helicopters, they're using the fact that they can push down on the air in order to be up. And if there's just less to push on, so their rotors have to go like 2,500 RPM, whereas down on the Earth, maybe 200 or 300 or 400 RPM. And so it's really amazing that, I mean, it was an experiment. It was not a very funded experiment. I mean, they were on a shoestring and they were persistent and they got this demonstration done. And so Monday morning, half an hour after it actually happened, they got to see the data where I saw the room full of engineers looking, and they saw the graph came down as data, and they saw that it was here, and then it was here 3 meters up, and then it was down again, and the look on their faces and the joy, and then the helicopter took a picture of Mars right below it, and you can see its shadow. So you can see the shadow of the helicopter. It gives me chills just to think about it. And Mimi Ong is the crew leader, is the lead of the whole operation, the helicopter team. And she said, we together flew on Mars, and this is our Wright brothers moment. And the only thing I would add to that is that it's actually the Wright family moment, in that the Wright brothers, their sister was their test director. Their mom was the inventor, tinkerer, figuring things out, MacGyver. Like there's a movie called Chitty Chitty Bang Bang where the dad is always like making stuff. Their mom was that dad, right? In terms of those things. And so, it's really neat that it takes such a big team to do things.
Can we see it? Do you have a piece to show?
I can do it real quick, but why don't you ask me something while I'm bringing it up?
Yeah.
All right, let's see here. Back to the scroll up here a minute. Brenda is asking, do you have to have any special training to be able to carry the weight of the spacesuit?
The spacesuit itself, I'm just closing the sharing thing here. Hold on a second. And so the spacesuit itself is, I'm just going to grab the helicopter thing here. Dun, 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 dun. There we go. The spacesuit itself weighs about 300 pounds, but on Earth, we actually use it in a giant swimming pool. And that way, they weigh us out so we don't sink, but we don't float. And that way we can work in kind of a weightless way. And at the same time, a tool, still weighs a certain amount. And if you make it out of really light aluminum, they corrode in the water and they don't work so well. So it's not simple just to make mock-ups. And so something heavy out here in your arms is still heavy. So it's still challenging to really, really simulate.
Yeah.
And keep asking and I'll now show you Mars.
Okay, let's see.
I'll just have to say the gym suit that I wore underwater, the counterpart of the spacesuit, weighed 1,000 pounds, but in the water it weighs 60 pounds. So
right. See the benefit of the water displacing that weight.
Yeah,
that's amazing. I mean, so this is the rover, Perseverance rover, and when they call her Percy, Perseverance. The team calls her Percy, and of course, when she landed, the first thing she did was take a selfie, as one would do. And one guy explained this to me. He goes, "Katie, this is not your grandmother's rover. This is not your mother's rover. This is not your rover. This is your grandkids' rover. It's got 23 cameras, and it's going to bring Mars to them." So this team was so happy when it landed. And
excellent.
There's the Mars team. And then here's our little baby helicopter. And it looks tiny, but those blades are actually 4 feet wide. And it weighs about 4 pounds. And then this is the graph that I talked about where it showed, you can see that the blades started and then it went up and then it just pivoted and then it came back down. And now they did another test just today. And then here it is down on the ground here. And I mean, this is Mars. We are looking at photographs and movies from Mars, okay? And I don't have the video, but here's the helicopter down. There's the helicopter up. Isn't that amazing? There's the shadow.
Get to the chopper.
It's like a dragonfly.
That's great.
It's wonderful.
And this is the plan that she's tearing up. That is, what if this doesn't work? That's their contingency plan. And she tore it up. It was really great.
So if we can do such cool things, Katie, why can't we save ourselves here on this planet? Come on.
Exactly.
Well, we can. And I think it comes down to communicating. I think there's a lot of good solutions out there, probably not enough, but certainly a lot that don't get communicated and shared. Right. And when they are shared, they're not always listened to. And so shows like yours that help share communication, I think are really important.
Thank you. We'd love to get scientists and explorers here to help tell their stories and to help and to share them in a broader context.
Well, we all want to come and meet you, you know, that's why. I was so honored to be with you on Earth Day.
Yeah, it's just wonderful. We're going to go with one other question.
This will be the wrap.
This will be the wrap question.
Okay.
Last question is greetings from India. Can you please tell us what teenagers can start doing to contribute to the ocean and marine life?
I'd like to hear this too.
Well, the question is to you, Cady.
Well, it's to all of us, but
Well, I think I already gave my suggestion, which is, you know, think of your solutions and share them. And when other people have them, listen to them. And even when you look at a person, I mean, look at them well enough, get to know them well enough to know when they have a solution inside them, that it's not easy for them to share, and get them to share it with you.
Right. And it is hard for people to, you know, take that risk to, you know, they worry about
Step
being,
out.
you know, step out. They get worried about being
Brave.
You've got to be brave, and, you know, there are people who are going to, you know, laugh at you or you try to provoke you further or something, but, you know, you just have to be steady. And we do see so many teenagers, younger people who are being brave. They're stepping up. They realize the planet's in trouble. That means they're going to be in trouble. Their future's at stake. And it's just great that, you know, people are more willing to take action and to make these choices that everybody can do. You know, you can, even if your government is not doing what you need it to do, or your politicians, your local city, whatever they are, you can still be a leader. You can still make choices and lead by example. And, you know, whether it's the food choices you make and decide you're going to eat on a, you know, lower on the food chain and make delicious recipes and share them. Just small things like that can really make a big difference. Choosing not to use the single-use plastics, taking active roles in cleaning up and picking up the environment around you, making sure that, you know, that, like you were saying, in space, you're not going to use that whole wet wipe. That would be outrageous. Why are we using up the whole box of them? Or, you know, why are we
There is no way.
Of course, we didn't have babies up there. Okay. So, you know, you might want to, I would use the whole wet wipe on the baby.
Yeah. But those are the kinds of things, just actively thinking before we consume something. You know, can we find that same thing secondhand? Can we repurpose and adaptively reuse something instead of buying it new?
But be good at something that you love and care about, whatever it is. I think that the kids, the teenagers, but even the younger kids of today are the luckiest kids ever to come on the earth, because we have knowledge. You have knowledge that was not possible to know before when I was a kid. The smartest people who ever lived before the 1950s did not know what Earth looked like from space. Now we know. We did not know that there was life at the deepest part of the sea. Now we know. We did not see that we could influence the nature of nature. We thought the ocean too big to fail. Now we know that what we do matters. What all of us do. I think kids have superpowers. It's the superpower of knowing. And you know, it's hard to quantify it, but even the fact that you're asking the question means that you are on the road in the right direction.
Absolutely. It's
what can I do to make a difference? And then, okay, there are all these problems. What is it that within my range of what, you know, can I be really good at math? Do I have a way with music? Do I have a way with adults or kids? Whatever it is that really makes your heart beat fast and that makes you special, follow that lead and then try to use it to make a difference. Taking care of the ocean, really, it can start in your backyard. That land and sea are connected, and making that connection, knowing how it works together. You can figure this out. The knowledge is certainly available. Just tap into it and become strong because of what you know.
And share that knowledge.
Yes, share that knowledge.
That's the most important thing of all. But thank you again, Cady, so much for coming in with us today on Earth Day. And
well, I've been so excited, and also, I don't know, I got to spend a little time on the Nautilus, on Bob Ballard's Nautilus ship. just outside of Turkey and getting to see the ocean and have a mission, you know, where you're really, and you know, just getting to control the robot, the ROVs. And I wasn't the main driver. I was the navigator, actually, but it let me kind of be, you know, the Aquarius is stationary and you're living in one place, but it let me actually really understand some about how to coexist with the ocean. And so I'm very honored to be with both of you here on Earth Day, and to trade solutions and challenges and have easy discussions and hard discussions, because that's what it's going to take. So I appreciate that you did that tonight with me.
Yeah, well, thank you again. And before we close today, we want to thank the Ocean Elders, our sponsors, for bringing us
You
all
are one.
together. And yes, she's
I am
one as
one.
well. I'm a friend.
You're younger.
I'm a younger. But we really thank all of you who keep tuning in to join us in these conversations. Diving feels like home to us, and I hope it feels that way to you. Water connects us all. You've made us believe that we're really making a difference. And so thank you. We're very grateful to everyone. We're going to be back in May with Richard and Owen Pyle. And they're
The
going to
Twilight
be
Zone.
the Twilight Zone guys. And they're going to be talking to us about deep reefs and seamounts and some of that technology as well,
rebreathers.
and rebreathers and other
Submersibles.
technologies.
Yeah.
So again, thank you so much. And before we are gone, we're going to remind everyone to take care of the ocean.
As if your life depends on it.
Because
It does.
it does.
It does.
Thank you, everyone. Happy Earth Day. Go out and make a difference.
Dive in.
Dive in.
Happy Earth Day.
Happy Earth Day.
Look forward to diving in.
And we'll see you next
It's
time.
a date.
Okay. Bye.
Bye for now.